Tune into Pops. Let me tell you about the show called Pops, where we drop the knowledge on all the latest stops. From comics and movies, games and TV shows.
I am Pops. Yeah, comic talk, Pops talk, call it what you will. A lot of folks talk about a grail, right? When they talk about comics, like a book that they always wanted, that they had on their radar screen. Usually they're graded comics, expensive comics, things that are really out of your price range, but maybe you level up or you sell one to kind of move into this. Well, for me, it's sort of like books that I don't want to overpay for, but I have some sort of emotional tie to. And this weekend, I was able to get one of those books. Now, this book is a book that dates back to 1978. That's right, Wee Little Pops. So I don't talk a lot about the different books specifically. There's only a handful that I have like vivid memories of. And this is one of those books. So let's set the table. Met a vendor at an event. We were talking about some different things that are going well for them, some suggestions about what would work for him, what would work for me, what people are asking for, what's selling well. And this person actually approached me about doing a trade anyway. And I went back and kind of countered about this particular book for nostalgic reasons. I'm not interested in the book for economic reasons. I've only owned this book twice. I owned it as a 7-year old. I owned it one other time. It was a beat up, torn up from the floor up copy that I remember selling, I think for $12 to $15, something like that. It was less than 20, but it was a solid amount. It was just a torn up book because it is an expensive book, and we're going to get to why. So, what book is this? It wasn't Avengers, but it was Spider Man. But more importantly, it was Spider Man and Daredevil, and even crazier, it has a guest artist, the Frank Miller. So before I become engulfed into comics later on because of Frank Miller, I was gravitating towards this book, Spider Man and Daredevil, doing Frank Miller. Like I was like, my head has just always been like, I've got to get another copy of this book, but I don't want it. It's sort of like an overpriced book because I don't know how to carve out the demand for something like it's already baked into the cake, right? So there's not going to really be a big move, even with the Daredevil show or even Spider Man, that's going to make this book move. So I've always thought it's rather expensive for what it is. So, all right, let's get to the big reveal. That's right. It's the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider Man number 27. Spidey's blind. He's teaming up with Daredevil. Obviously, look at this action-packed cover. Newsstand copy. So talk about getting close to what I actually would have gotten as a kid. This is actually pretty close. It has a lot of issues on the spine, especially things like that. But I may end up getting this like cleaned and pressed for me just to have a nicer copy. I don't think I would grade it because I don't think it'll grade out well. And I kind of want it for nostalgic reasons. I kind of wanted to, I already did. I already opened it up, really look at the ads and stuff like that. So let's go through the book a little bit. We can talk more about it. And here you go, guys. So I I'm just sort of blown away in hindsight because as a kid, I didn't look at the copy that they scanned. It's like got all sorts of it's a worse copy than the one I have. That might have been the copy I sold back in the 90s. So again, there he is, Frank Miller, guest penciler. Bill Mantello is the writer. Frank Springer on ink. Editor is Mary Jo Duffy. And Jim Shooter is the editor in chief. Spectacular Spider Man is blind, rendered sightless by the masked marauder, accused of complicity and haunted by the police. So Daredevil's there. He's like over here, wall crawler. And then you have sort of like this back and forth. But immediately look at Miller's style with Daredevil, the way he uses a lot of black and creates shadows and musculature. And then the same thing with Spidey, but really with Daredevil. Like in hindsight, and I've told the story many times where I went from Batman 89 to Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, Batman Year One, down the DC rabbit hole with Crisis on Infinite Earths and all those kinds of characters. And then the Marvel side, because of Frank Miller doing Dark Knight Returns in Year One, I immediately found Electro Assassin, which led me to Daredevil, his Daredevil run, and I was this massive Frank Miller fan. Little did I know for a while later that Spectacular Spider-Man was this early Daredevil book. So, yeah, look at the art. This is a style we see very early on in that Frank Miller run. Again, the Frank Miller run starts around 158. When you get to 168 and you have the first appearance of Elektra, which is the full control that Miller has with both writing and art. And then, of course, he starts working with Klaus Janson. Just great action, great movement. Look at he's creating a lot more action than we normally would get panel by panel by having these sort of like silhouetted moves. Daredevil moves so quickly that he has that style and approach to things. Here he's catching Spidey because Spidey's all blind and messed up. So now this is the other thing that gets me. I was so again, I opened this book up. I got home. I opened it up and I just quickly went through some of these pages and I stopped and thought to myself, man, as a kid, I love the Micronauts. To me, Micronauts, if you've never heard about Micronauts, they are these, again, hence the name, small toys, 3 and 3/4 inch action figures, but they were like uber articulated. They had like little like disc for joints. So unlike Star Wars figures who had just hinges, Micronauts had like tons of joints, spring loaded ships and stuff. So they would have like a pilot seat thing that would shoot out from the main ship, things like that. So they were fantastic to have in addition to all the other action figures you had of that era. Didn't really get into Micronaut comics until later, and then I just realized that they had just put such great artists on this series. There's some just really good stuff back in that day. Not a huge fan of like the stories and that kind of thing. I do think there's enough material there that you could create something that we could adapt. But yeah, I saw that ad. It took me back right back into Spidey and look at Spidey. He says Spidey goes on like this melodramatic, I can't ever be somebody kind of thing. Daredevil's jumping in. He says, Spider-Man, listen to me. Maybe there's a cure. He's like, no, the Marauder said the effects of his optic blast were permanent. I'm finished. Don't you understand that? And then he slams him. Amazing Spider-Man is finished. So, and I've forgotten how strong he is. And I think this is, again, as a kid, I was like, whoa, that's super cool. And I have to admit, it was years later that I sort of understood more about like the mythology, like the history, the canon that surrounds Spider-Man, Daredevil in particular, but Spider-Man about he's so powerful. He spends most of his time sort of like holding back his strength. Like people don't get how strong Spider-Man really is, and he has to kind of like be very careful, similar to the way Superman does in some ways. So thought all this was great as a kid. Again, just cool ads. These are the characters I grew up on, man. Look at that Nova, the original Cap, the real Captain Marvel. Look at this, the real Shang-Chi, Kung Fu. There's my Daredevil, Hulk. Now, again, as a little kid, a 7-year-old pops, I would get these books from the grocery stores. I think there was a Magic Market convenience store that when I get a couple, but almost all of my comic books came via my grandmother. She would take me to this firehouse thrift store, it's this little thrift store that was tied to fundraising for the fire department. There was this little basket in the back where they had books. I remember it very vividly to this day. It had like a bowl shaped base and a wicker top. And in there, there'd be these baskets full of comic books. You could get like 10 for $1 or something like that. And that is where I got most of my comics. And yes, to this day, I still have one of those, which is an Incredible Hulk reprint of some kind. So back to the action again. The George, look at the Frank Miller, the art and the style here is completely different, foreshadowing this incredible run that he would have on Daredevil. Look at him; he's basically just telling you the story of how Daredevil become Daredevil. A little bit of little things here, so it just really is just setting the stage for him to just be that great artist, that great creator that we get later on. Lovely stuff here with other characters like Mary Jane and things like that. We kind of get just what's going on here with Peter. They bring him in. They kind of put the web over his face. They do some sort of ocular exam and that kind of thing. And I just love the fact that he's just stressed out. He just can't believe that he could possibly be this blind. And of course, the story goes on from there. Then you have a little letters page. Micronauts are coming, and then you have a little bit more of the story here near the end. And yeah, I will admit that I couldn't believe I was so giddy, so happy. Look at how good Shang Chi looks. See, whenever there's Shang Chi and there's Kung Fu, this is what we wanted. not that beta, sad, pathetic model looking stuff that we ended up with. So yeah, this was a long story. It's not a short. It's a short, not a short issue. Got a lot of stuff in here. Really enjoying it. Enjoyed the action. Here's this thing flying at them, which of course Spidey, you don't think Spidey can miss. There you go. You get a sequel issue from there. So yeah. So I don't know. Do you guys have Grail issues? Do you have books that I've always wanted a copy? I want to read it, own it, or do you want to have like a really nice one? So I have some of that stuff. I have to this day. I still have like my super nice unread. Went out and found this beautiful version of like Dark Knight Returns, and I have a Killing Joke, and I have some of that stuff. I've parted with some things. I haven't parted with everything. But one thing I never really had gotten back, and I regret it to this day because I'd kind of gotten back into comics a little bit. And I walked in a room and there was an Avengers 181, which is the first appearance of Scott Lang, which is irrelevant to the story. It's just the fact that there's all these characters on it. And that was another one of these books. Again, that's from that era of just like, yeah, can't believe it. And then with the irony, of course, the Frank Miller backstory. So I thought I would share. But yeah, this was a big get for the old birthday weekend. So um, just worked out great. It worked out a nice trade for this young man and his store and his business. And then it made me super, super happy. And I thought I'd share that with you guys. So I'm probably going to put it right over here on the wall. Probably going to move Vader on out. And we've moved past Star Wars month and we're into the summertime. Don't have a ton of shark stuff, mind you, for Shark Week, Shark Month. But little birthday stuff there, I think, is what needs to kind of go against that wall in its place. And that's where that book will probably end up. So listen, folks, thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Hit me up with those comments on obviously Spider-Man, Daredevil stuff, Miller stuff you like, don't like, maybe books that you're looking for, things like that. Love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. I'm Pops.
Thank you for tuning